Welcome everyone to another episode of Mental Unblock. This is your host Omar, and this week we host our first female entrepreneur. She was born in Mauritius, moved to Dubai, and at some point decided to start her own business. She did so using nothing but a laptop, working out of a coffee shop, and a little help from friends, family, and personal savings. Today, that same startup spans across multiple countries, has managed to raise over $15 million in funding, and is being named by Forbes magazine as the region's second most disruptive fintech platform. She is the CEO and founder of Souqalmal, Ambareen Musa. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, how are things at Souqalmal?
Doing great. Been going through 6 years of ups and downs, as any startup does, but very happy where we are. We recently closed a $10 million round last year, and using this to really push the business up.
Congratulations. We're going to come back in a little bit. I want to talk about your growth, your expansion, the funding, how you did all that. But let's go back a little bit in time, share with the viewers who Ambareen Musa is. You were born in Mauritius.
Absolutely.
Tell us a little bit more about your childhood. What was that like? Your parents, you come from a family of entrepreneurs. So take us back and tell us a little bit about your childhood.
So yeah, born and bred in Mauritius. Did my first secondary school out there, and then got a scholarship to go to Australia. So Mauritius is a very multicultural place. So funnily enough, you grew up in an environment where cultural sensitivity is a big part of it.
Sure.
One. Two, education is absolutely everything. I mean, think about it, an island, 1.2 million people, there's not much
Sure.
going at it. So if you've got any aspiration whatsoever, you do tend to think bigger and broader. And I think
Sure.
it's interesting because we've always wondered what makes us drive ourselves so hard. And I think blessing in disguise, you might call it,
Sure.
but coming from a small country where there's not much opportunity post high school and undergrad, you do tend to think there's one way, which is out.
Sure.
And I think you do whatever you need to do to get through. But also the family was education was, for my dad anyway, education was the utmost important.
Sure.
In
Family, you've got siblings, 2 siblings, I believe.
2 big brothers.
Okay. Were they
Yes.
protective?
They were protective in a very interesting way.
Tell us what were they like?
So they were protective, but incredibly a bit of an accomplice to me as well.
Sure.
So they were protective from there's a little stuff, but never was very conservative protective.
Mm-hmm.
On the contrary, they got me around my parents quite a
Right.
lot, which was
Interesting.
and I think I kind of built quite a bit of an accomplice between us, and until today we're extremely close.
Sure.
I'm actually seeing them in a couple of weeks again. I go home probably 4 or 5 times a year,
Good.
even if it's for a weekend. Great thing about Mauritius, 6 hours flight,
Nice.
3 flights a day, no time difference.
Why did you move to Dubai?
So I've gone a few places before turning up here.
Sure.
I remember really well. So the first idea of Dubai I had was when the Palm was getting built. And for me, I remember I was very young. I was like
Sure.
10 or something. And I remember thinking, wow, what is this place? Like, what is this country? But then forgot about it because I was too busy to go to Australia,
Sure.
thinking how to study, get out and whatnot. So I did a stop over in Australia for 6 years, did my university degree there, did my first business, which I sold after 2 years, then got a job with GE, then they shipped me off to London. So I did 3 years in London where I launched the GE Money brand. And then from there I decided I couldn't wait for 10 years to become CMO, which was
Sure.
my dream at the time of GE.
Sure.
So I went to INSEAD, thinking I would jump 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And was supposed to go back, but then when I went to INSEAD, both in France and in Singapore, it was 2007.
Wow.
It was double-digit growth everywhere,
Sure.
right? And Dubai in the Middle East was booming like there's no tomorrow, and there were
Right.
no taxes. So from Singapore, when I was looking for jobs, ended up getting a job with Bain & Company in Dubai.
Right.
And here I am 11 years later.
Actually, I just want to say, for people who are not familiar with Souqalmal, can you, in 60 seconds or less, let's call it a 60-second challenge, tell people out there, what is Souqalmal exactly, for people who don't know it?
It's very simple. Souqalmal is a comparison site for banks products, which is credit card, mortgages, personal loans, bank accounts. And it's also a comparison site of car insurance, which means you put in your details and your car details. Within 30 seconds, you get quotes from 15 different insurance providers.
Sure.
And from there, you can actually pick one. You see all the details. You compare them side by side. You pick a car insurance. You put in your credit card details. And within an hour, you've got your policy. You got your RTA and get your registration done.
Nice. I think you did that in, how long was that, guys? 40 seconds?
I think I probably am good. I'm so used to it, right? In 60 seconds, it's a 60 seconds pitch.
Yeah.
So
Now listen, I mean, a lot of people also underestimate the amount of work, the dedication that goes into being an entrepreneur, starting a business. How dedicated were you? In fact, it's not even that. How difficult was it when you first got started? How challenging was it?
It's interesting that it's harder now than it used to be.
Okay.
When you first start, what have you got to lose?
Sure.
Nothing much.
Sure.
Just started. It doesn't work 6 months' time, you close down, you move on to something else. And you're on your own.
Sure.
Okay, so you're still got this thrive and you're still building it. As you get bigger and bigger and you start raising funding, one, responsibility towards investors getting the play, right? And that's a big one. And a lot of people come to me and say, wow, raising funding. And I said, do you need money? Well, not really. I'm like, well, why are you raising? I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's, it means success. I'm like, raising funding doesn't mean success.
Sure.
It is responsibility towards your investors.
Absolutely.
Don't forget that. So if you actually don't need funding and you're profitable business and you can scale up.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys profitable? Are you cash flow positive?
We're not.
You're not. Okay.
We've got two businesses. The banking business is. The banking business is profitable and cash flow positive.
Okay.
The insurance business is a 2-year-old business.
Okay.
This is still loss-making.
All right.
So. Yeah.
Sure. What was the toughest moment when you got started? I'm sure you can think back to one of the toughest moments. What was the hardest challenge that you had to overcome that you dealt with?
It was two things, actually. One was convincing banks
Sure.
and insurance companies to work with us. Right. When you first start, you don't have a brand. You're small. I remember very well, we went into one of the banks and he said to us, there's 6 of you guys. And that was a time where comparison of banks was the only thing aggregator did. Aggregators now, so we've moved on to insurance as well. We've got both. You've got credit cards, mortgages, where you compare them, you can apply to the banks. But we've also got insurance. At the time, we only had comparison of financial products. And banks would tell me I started 6 months in, 6 of us came through. 6 competitors out of the blue.
Wow.
Right? And banks said to us, the 6 of you, come back in 6 months. Whoever is alive, we'll work with them.
Wow.
So it's interesting how even the banks thought, we don't want to get involved into somebody who's probably not going to be around in 6 or 8 months. And in 6 or 8 months, the market itself will reposition.
Sure.
Right? And the survivors will start.
How much rejection did you have to deal with then?
Oh, if you can't deal with rejection as an entrepreneur, you'll never be successful.
Do you still deal with it today? You do?
Of course.
Okay. The reason why I asked that is because...
rejection from, not about I don't want to work with you, but hey, I'm not going to give you the percentage that you want, or I'm not going to give you the product that you want. And it's a negotiation game.
Absolutely. So you started Souqalmal. I think you might have been pregnant at that time with your first kid, and you were working out of a coffee shop with a laptop. And just a very simple start. How did it grow to become what it is?
It was a very simple startup. Funny enough, so the story is I was on maternity leave.
Okay.
6 weeks in, I was suffocating. Let's put it that way. It was very, I needed to do something. And I was always going to go back into the entrepreneurship world. And the first time I got to Dubai in 2008, the first thing I saw, there was no comparison site. So I emailed Money Supermarket in the UK, which is the #1 in the UK today. And I asked them, hey, give me your system, I'll just launch it here. Mm-hmm. There's 50 banks. There has to be an aggregator site. They never responded. But then I was too busy at Bain, and then I got moved over to MasterCard. It's only when I got on maternity leave that I thought, I'll look it up again, and nobody had done it.
So that's where the idea was born.
It was in 2008.
And how did you first fund this? I mean, did you stumble across a big pile of cash, or was it personal savings?
It was my bank account.
How much? I think something like $70,000 is all you had, and you worked with that?
Yeah, so basically what I did, the way I did it was, I didn't quit my job.
Okay.
Right? I was working at the same time, I was on maternity leave. So I had a full-time salary coming in, plus I had savings on the side, and that's what I used to kick off the business for 6 months.
Sure.
And post 6 months is when we were chosen by ArabNet.
Yes.
So I've got a very warm idea about ArabNet, because that's where we first ever launched a business in Beirut. We got chosen as the top 10 startups to come and pitch. So I quit my job and went there.
Wow.
Literally took the plane out to Beirut.
Did you give it enough thought, or did you just jump and do it? Because, you had somewhat of a senior position working at MasterCard. When you leave these senior positions, the pool of opportunities for you becomes smaller, because you're working a senior position. Did you think about it, or did you just decide to jump and do it?
Do you know what? I get asked this question a lot, is what made you leave?
Sure.
I've never really had the concept of staying in the corporate world forever.
Sure.
Being an entrepreneur was just a no-brainer. I was brought up in it. So it was just kind of normal to have your own business.
Right.
It was just finding the right time and the right place and the right idea. So it was a bit of a no-brainer to do it. But I did wait for 6 months to make sure that that was the right idea.
Sure.
And I wanted to test the market. I didn't want to also be, complete, just go out there and spend money and see what happens. I didn't like that either. So it was very much 6 months of investing into it,
sure,
but also keeping my job and then figuring out, is there potentially, because why had nobody done it? That was the first question I had.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why hadn't anybody done it?
I don't know.
You just beat everybody to the punch, was that it?
No, I think what it is to run a business like Souqalmal.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just say, I come from the banking industry, I'm going to start it. You can't say, I've spent 15 years in the insurance industry, I'm just going to start.
Sure.
There's a whole digital aspect to it. Running a digital aggregator and running an insurance business is two very different things.
You've raised a couple of rounds of funding. How much have you raised exactly now? Over $15 million?
Over $15 million.
Okay. And a lot of people look at entrepreneurship as something different than what it is or what it mainly is. In other words, the media portrays entrepreneurship to be all glitz and glamour, but in a lot of the cases, that's not it. Entrepreneurs, despite how successful they get sometimes, they still do what they have to do to make sure that the business gets priority. So, in your perspective, what is entrepreneurship really like? Is it as glamorous as it's made out to look? You said something at one point which I really liked, something along the lines, even for a person with the highest levels of perseverance, entrepreneurship could be very difficult and challenging. What do you mean by that?
I think as an entrepreneur already, you've got a certain level of perseverance. You need to be able to fall apart, pick up with a smile, and keep going. And entrepreneurs, as a general rule, are people who don't give up.
Sure.
They just never give up. Otherwise, you can't be an entrepreneur. You'd give up within 6 months of starting a business. So even for someone like this, you need to be able to take rejection. Mm-hmm. You need to be able to take no's and no's over and over, especially at the beginning. Once you build a brand, things come in a lot easier. But then on the other side, then you start having talent management issues, cash flow issues, investor issues, board issues.
Right.
So there's constantly issues morning to night. At some point, at the end of the day, you just go, I can't deal with any more issues.
Sure.
But I think part of me feels like this is what kind of drives us as well.
Yeah, but let me interrupt you. You say at some point, you say you can't deal with this anymore. Did you ever get to a point where you thought about quitting? Were you ever close to actually quitting or giving up?
No. But have I said, why am I doing this? Absolutely.
That was my next question.
Absolutely.
Did you question what you've done?
So you question it on a superficial level.
Okay.
Because when you really get down, you're like, no, are you kidding? I've never had as much fun in my career as I'm having today. I can't even see myself going back in the corporate world. Ever.
What happens if you get fully acquired? Would you not go back to work?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, when that happens, though, we'll get back on the show.
Sounds good. Are there people out there that try to discourage you from doing this? Does it happen all the time? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Not anymore, but yes. At the beginning,
sure,
there were people. I mean, I remember my first person I ever came across for funding said to me, "You'll never get anywhere. Never. This business is a complete waste of time."
And who was that?
That I will keep quiet.
Okay.
And someone else told me, "You're absolutely brilliant entrepreneur, but you're betting on the wrong horse. Why don't you come and work for me instead?" So
right.
Yeah, you have it all and you hear it all. And again, that's why when I say, I think if you're going to do that as an entrepreneur, one, you need to believe in it, and two, you need to be absolutely passionate about it.
Why is it that you do this? What is the main drive for you as Ambareen?
It's the growth and it's the build of it. And now that I have two kids who are at an age, and I look at how they view the business, it's absolutely phenomenal. For them, I can't even, I don't even have words to tell you. They come to the office every week, once a week. And for them, it's the biggest pride.
Sure.
Mommy having her own company. And I can't really explain to you why, but I think the role model that I think you can give is something I think it would be very hard for me to give otherwise. You're
quite aggressive, competitive, I can tell by nature. How do you deal with your competition? In fact, let me ask you this. Do you have a bigger market share than your competitors?
It depends on what you're talking about.
Okay.
We from a numbers perspective, competitor, well, it depends which one, but you've got 5 of them today.
Okay. Who's your biggest competitor?
Should I mention them? Maybe
Okay,
not.
you don't have to.
We have a very aggressive competitor, and I think between us and them is just completely different strategy. There's different strategies you can run this business. You can run the business with short-term gain, short-term revenue, grow now, burn a whole lot of money. Sure. Or you can run it as profitable, sustainable, and partnership way to actually grow the business in the future. And the way we're doing it is we've picked, whether it's right or wrong, we'll find out.
Sure.
But we've chosen the path of sustainable growth.
Okay.
Finding partnerships, different ways to actually acquire customers at the right moment, at the right price, and with the right service.
Okay.
I think, how do I deal with competitors? I think one of the most important way to deal with your competitor is to stay focused on what you're doing. The last thing you want to do is be reactive to absolutely everything, because then you're not focused anymore. It's a complete kind of cat and mouse story, right? So I always tell the team, focus on what you're doing. We've got a vision. We know where we're going. We've got our numbers to hit.
Sure.
Focus on what we have to do. Put your head down and keep doing. Keep an eye out on what's going on and where we can potentially, adapt ourselves to any new market dynamics that's going on. But stay focused.
You're in Forbes magazine. You raised millions of dollars. I called you last week, and your son answered the phone.
That is quite true. I do remember that.
And I think
he had a conversation with you.
He did. How old is he? God bless him.
He is 3.5.
Well, he had a full-on conversation, and you know what? He said, "Mommy's busy right now. She can't talk." And I was like, "Well, could you please tell her I called?" And he was like, "What's your name?" I said, "Omar." And he goes, "Okay, bye-bye." And I just thought it was the cutest thing ever. So
I think the word busy has unfortunately become quite a vocabulary, and this is the thing, right? They grow up understanding that there's a time for everything, but they grow up understanding that this doesn't come easy. You have to work hard to get somewhere, and they've learned the priorities where when I'm in a meeting, I'm in a meeting. So they come to the office every week, but they know there are times they can't disturb me. So yes, I'm guessing he was on the phone, and he picked up the phone when you called, but he knows I can't disturb Mommy because she's in a meeting.
Has this entrepreneurial journey affected your family's relationship? I mean, is there a price? Do your kids pay a price for having the CEO mom, for example? Do you find a way to make up for that? I mean, is there actually a happy medium?
I think the happy medium is very subjective, and it's really up to you.
Okay.
Right. So there are things I had to give up. So I have a very strict schedule, and everybody knows in the office post 6 o'clock, I'm not available. Between 6 and 8:30, I am not available, no matter what it is. Rare circumstances, I will make time for it. But 6 to 8:30, I am home. I cook dinner for the kids. I have dinner with them, put them into their bath, read the books, and put them to bed.
And you do that every night?
Every single night.
What happens when you travel?
Except when I travel. Of course. And when I travel, I do try and do the day trips.
Yep.
Right? Or maximum, I'll go one night.
Do they ever go on business trips with you?
No.
Okay.
I don't mix that. I can't focus. Right. Not on business trips. They would come to the office once a week, but that's about it. But they understand when I have to work. And it's funny because even Rania, my daughter, would say, "Mama, I care about your company. You really should be going now. You'd be late for your meeting." So it's a strict medium, but yes, they do. It's a pros and a con, right? Absolutely. They do not have the time of a full-time mom at home. Absolutely not. But they gain by seeing what we can achieve and if you put the work in it, what you can get to.
Sure.
So I think it's a pros and con. And again, it's a happy medium. For me, the happy medium is being home. That 6 to 8:30 is an extremely important part. But then I give up my social life because post 8:30 I go back to work. Right? So it's all, and for now it works for me. It's great. And every morning I actually have breakfast with them and bring them to school. Nice. I've been told, take the school bus. No, I want to be, because that's the 20 minutes in the car that I have with them, and it gets me to work early. I'm in the office by 8. Right. So.
Now, before we wrap things up, there's a couple things that I want to ask you. First of all, Souqalmal, I love the website. What I admire about it the most is it's quite educational. And you actually, you had an incident that happened to you years ago where you were leasing a car and you noticed after a certain period of time that the numbers just weren't adding up. Your Excel sheet told you something different than what the bank was charging you. What was it? Just walk me through that again and how Souqalmal could actually help you avoid that, because it has to do with the interest rate. So for those that are not aware of it, including myself, educate us a bit on that.
It was a very simple case of interest rates and how they calculated. So in this region, there is 2 types of rates on personal loans and car loans. There's a flat rate and a reducing rate. A flat rate is a rate that they will charge you on your principal, which means I borrow 100K I get charged 5%.
Okay.
I get charged 5% for the next 5 years.
Okay.
Whether or not I've paid down my principal.
Okay.
It's still 5%. On the last year, I'm still paying 5% on 100, right? And then there's a reducing rate, which is generally 1.8 something, 1.89 on top of the flat rate. So it will be more expensive. It will be a higher number.
Sure.
But you only pay on your reducing balance.
Okay.
Right? So you can't just say this is cheaper than the other, but then when the banks actually go out and advertise it, some banks do flat, some banks are reducing. And I got caught in one bank telling me it was a flat, it was a rate. So I thought 2.99 was a fantastic rate, having just landed in Dubai. So I did not realize there was a flat and a reducing rate, because you go to the UK, it's all reducing. It's an APR, it's one rate.
Okay.
And when I was calculating my rate or my repayment on Excel, I was using the reducing rate. So the actual effective rate on the 2.99 was 4.98. Which suddenly was like, wait, that's an expensive rate.
Yes.
So which is why it wasn't matching. The bank was doing 2.98 on 100, but the second year I was doing my 2.9 on 80,000, not on 100,000. So I don't understand.
So essentially, you had to pay everything based on the actual interest rate.
Yes, but I was paying on the principal for the next 5 years versus on a reducing rate.
Right.
And because the rate was so low, I thought it was low, but it's actually the effective rate was much higher.
Okay.
So basically, it's when you compare the different rates, you need to make sure you take the banks, you take their rates, look whether they're flat rates or reducing, and convert everything into either all reducing or either all flat.
Sure.
So what we've done on Souqalmal, if you go and look for a car loan, we'll have the rate, and we'll tell advertised rate is this. We'll tell you whether it's a reducing or a flat rate, and then we'll convert it all into one, either reducing or flat. So you actually always compare like for like.
Now, one thing that I notice as well being in the UAE is a lot of people, a lot of expats, tend to overstretch themselves financially. And that's because financial institutions make it quite easy. And I mean, even with websites like Souqalmal, you can go compare credit cards, loans, whatever it is, and apply for it then and there. And to some extent, you even have bank sales reps walking into offices saying, you know, we have an agreement with your company. I can give you a credit card right now. I actually had that happen to me at one point where somebody literally gave me a 100,000 dirham limit with basic requirements, right?
This is how Souqalmal idea came in the first time. When I landed in Dubai.
Sure.
One of the banks came in and did exactly that. And I thought, well, what are my other options? Oh, well, madam, call me when you're done with calling all the 20 banks.
What I wanted to ask you, though, is with all these products being made so easy, do you think that's a reason why a lot of expats actually tend to overstretch themselves financially? A lot of them come here, work for years, only to find out that they're in so much debt and end up leaving with nothing? So
this was the case a few years ago.
Okay.
Things have changed a lot, and since the credit bureau has come on board.
Okay.
So before the credit bureau, which was 3 years ago, before the last 3 years, you could have 20 credit cards. Nobody will know. You would just go to a bank and say, I don't have any, and they'll give you one.
Right.
They had nowhere to check your credit history.
But now they do.
Now they do. So what people used to do is take a credit card and then take another one, take another one, take a loan, can't afford the repayments, just take on a new one. The new guy don't know you've already got a loan, paid off, do that again, and they would get over and over and live happily ever after.
Yes.
Until the credit bureau came on board.
Okay.
So the next time you can't repay your loan, so you go find another one, they go in the credit report, they look at all the loans you have, like, sorry, I can't give you one. And that's where, in the last 3 years, you've seen a huge indebtedness coming out in the open. Because suddenly people can't take another loan to repay the previous one. Sure. Because the new bank wouldn't give it to them. So I think with time, you'll see the indebtedness will decrease. But I think on the other side, the indebtedness level actually really came through because of the concept of, wow, it's a zero tax place. Sure. And you're exposed to a lavish lifestyle, and everybody is aspiring to have a certain lifestyle. Sure. And credit was so easy to get. Put everything on the credit card.
What's next for Ambareen and Souqalmal?
What's next is a very good question. I'm living day on day at the moment. In 6 months, and I can't even tell you what's going to happen in the next 6 months. So I'm guessing the next show we'll talk about what's happening next. Sure. I honestly, for now, it's very much the biggest focus is literally growing this business regionally and making it not just the UAE's biggest financial comparison site, but the region's biggest comparison site. But not only that, making it a sustainable growing business, which is very, very important to me, but literally not forget our core. And our core is about education and is about trust. And I think one of the areas, I think we're the only financial aggregator that's managed to do this, we are the most trusted brand in the industry.
Sure.
And we're not just talking about consumers. And I hear this from investors. I hear this from banks. I hear it from insurance. I even hear it from the government. We've built an incredibly trusted brand, which is very marked into the economy. And I think that's, I guess, where we were awarded quite a few awards from Forbes.
There you go. You've had some advertising time on the show. Which entrepreneurs in the market do you actually look up to? Is there anybody within the local market that you admire, that you like how they do business, that you'd like to do more things like them? Is there anybody that would be considered a role model for you in the UAE in terms of entrepreneurs?
Look, I think we kind of all started a little bit at the same time. I think every one of the entrepreneurs, and I admire all of them. I think, as a general rule, I don't think I've ever met an entrepreneur that I didn't admire.
Okay.
And everyone has their own way of doing things. Everyone has their own industry they're in. But one thing I can tell you is every single time I meet one of them, there is always a certain learning that I never knew before.
Who's one person that resonates with you?
Hard to say one, but the one entrepreneur who does resonate with me is my dad, unfortunately. I have to bring it back.
That is cute.
He's had 3 businesses, and he's taught me some of the things I could have not learned from anywhere else. And one of it is perseverance.
Wow. Yeah. Now, our crew is signaling to us. We're running out of time here. As we wrap it up, I just want to very quickly ask you, in a minute or less, what are your top 3 tips for entrepreneurs out there? What sort of advice would you give them?
First of all, is if you're going to do this, be sure you know what you're getting yourselves into. Make sure that you're financially stable to go at 2 to 3 years, potentially without making an income. Love what you do. Be passionate about it. And don't jump into it just kind of as a default.
Sure.
And third thing is, if you want to go out and raise funding, make sure you've got a product, at least an MVP that can show what you're capable of doing.
Ambareen, thank you so much for being here. Really excited to have you. Very inspirational, motivational story. And we look forward to having you here again.
Thank you. It was an absolute pleasure.
Guys, there you have it. Ambareen Musa. This is your host, Omar, signing off. Mental Unblock. Make sure you tune in to next week's episode. See you.